Here again. We're going to be doing our first video today on Warband progression. We're going to be talking a little bit about skills and abilities and where to put your stat points in your Skaven. Of course, there are no right answers here. I'm simply going to talk through what I found to be useful for my Warband, and we're going to start off with one of our star players, one of our, I don't know, the equivalent of our quarterback, the guy we can rely on. He is our star without a doubt, our Knight Runner, aka our Knight Gunner. He's wielding two pistols and they are absolutely devastating. The reason being, and this is all in his skills and abilities, he has a mixture of warp poison and crippling shots. Now, by the time you've applied warp poison, which will take away 2 offensive points from an enemy, and made the shots with crippling shot to apply the poison, you will remove 4 offensive points from an enemy unit. Now, if that's a hero, you're effectively going to take away 2 rounds of attacking from them. So instead of them charging in, or you charging them and them attacking you or counter-attacking twice, they're not going to do anything. Likewise with a sorcerer, you can effectively nullify all of their offense for that round. And it's worth pointing out as well that by the time we've mastered both of these, we'll be taking away 8 offensive points in total, just with these 2 abilities, which, let's face it, 3 blue, 3 red is not an expensive trade to take away 8 enemy offensive points. Something like an impressive suddenly won't be that impressive once you take away 8 of their offensive points. Now, other things that it's worth throwing into the mix here: quick reload, trick shooter. Quick reload goes without saying. You're using a black powder weapon, so having those cheap reloads really means you can save some of your blue strategy points to move around, reload, perhaps even get off 2 aimed shots on an enemy unit if you just need to get some damage off. Aside from that, trick shot, always really useful to make sure you land the hits. The most important thing here is that we actually hit the enemy to apply these poisons. Now, one thing I am really looking forward to getting as poison expert to guarantee us to apply this poison to the enemy to get our debuffs off. So that's what we're going to be working on next. We're going to be putting our points into intelligence, and as you can see, we can only get to 10, but we only need 9 thankfully to get this. It's going to make him even more devastating. We'll probably be looking to master quick reload. Aside from that, building him from here, to be honest, he's got where he needs to be. I won't be spending too much more. I'll just be looking to master what we've got already. Perhaps throw another couple of points into some other ranged offensive ability passives, but I'm not entirely sure yet. The crippling shot and the warp poison really are the bread and butter of this character. It also kind of helps that he's wielding blue warplock pistols and he hits like a truck. So, moving forward, I think the next star player has got to be actually one of our warp guards. I would love to say it's one of our heroes. They do some damage, but the warp guards are very good at what they're there for, and in my warband it is to tank. And yes, you could argue it's not very Skaven-like to be wielding heavy armor, shields, and to be basically a battle tank, but that's what you need in a strategy game like this. You need someone to absorb the hits. We could be doing a hit and run tactics, however, every now and again an enemy's going to engage us and we're just going to need someone to be there and just sponge, basically. So, talking through the builds first of all, we're going to go on to the skills. We're going with defensive abilities first. We need these guys to live. There's no point having them as utility tanks when they're just going to die, and basically you have to replace them if they keep dying. First port of call for these guys is going to be survival, seeing as they're going to be absorbing hits. So we're just going with melee, parry, increase, both very good. Melee resistance is very impressive. Simply, it gives you an extra chance for them to miss, and then you still have your chance to parry. So it essentially is much better than just a straight parry increase, because it's giving you another method of them missing, which gives you, or means you still keep a hold of your parry. Hopefully that I didn't waffle too much, that made a bit of sense. And also we're going for tactics, 15% parry. You shouldn't ever squaffle at that. That is a lot of parry. Now, after these abilities, what we're going to be doing is probably building into leadership and intelligence. Some of these two. For this character in particular, we're going to go with intelligence, so we can go with lad's got talent and make this guy a really super beefy tank. But for the other tanks in my sort of henchman slots, they're going with leadership. Reason being is 12 leadership will just about get you in your passive slots a very, very good ability called demoralize. 10% per hit, assuming you've got it mastered, of all alone test reduction, and it does stack. It's really important to know that it does stack, because these guys are using single-handed weapons. They're going to be swinging up to 3 or 4 times per round once they're fully leveled. That's 30% reduction each to an enemy's all alone test. That means not only will the enemy not do any damage to you, but it means you're also going to get a free swing with all of the units engaged, potentially meaning your heroes with Weeping Blades might get another round of attack, which is really, really important, seeing as they're using two-handers and it's expensive to attack. So would you want a free attack on your heroes? Of course, get Demoralize, fantastic ability. And it's worth noting as well, leadership adding to their morale, psychological tests, very useful for a frontline tank, because they're going to be the people you're going to be charging into the battle with. Now it's worth saying, seeing as we've stacked weapon skill and toughness, they will be tanky, they will have a lot of parry by the time we've finished maxing those out, but they cannot parry attacks from impressives. Worth remembering, you cannot parry something from an armband attack. So, dodge of 5%. This basically means they're going to be taking a lot of damage from impressives. What I would suggest is having at least one dodge tank in your party so that you can engage an impressive with him and they can actually avoid the attacks from that opponent. That in this case will be one of our heroes. We'll come on to that more later, but just remember for the meantime, you may be a parry tank, you may have heavy armour, but it really doesn't matter because you cannot parry something from a tree trunk hitting you. Okay, worth noting that. Now I think what we'll probably do is move on to one more character here. We'll talk a little bit our leader and our Black Skaven. They are essentially very, very similar in this. We're going with very similar builds. We're working on crit. As you can see, 21% already at level 4 is quite damn good. Reason being, and this is all down to skills, yes, we're putting some points in accuracy and that'll help. We're not very high on the weapon skill, but we'll touch on why. And we're going for agility, but we're also going to be working on toughness with him, and again I'll tell you why in just a moment. Skill wise, we're going for quite a straightforward build. We're getting Swarm because that ups our hit chance by 5% and our melee critical hit by 5%. I think this is just a really good ability. Hitting chance increases to 10%. As long as he's not the first person into a fight, and remember you can always delay, he's going to be much more reliable to hit. 10% hit is the equivalent of having an extra 5 weapon skill. Okay, so we can actually we can afford to put more points in accuracy first and then weapon skill, because we're getting the plus hit percentage from the Swarm passive. And the 5% crit is obviously nice, and it will go up to 10. Now we're going with Art of Silent Death here for the Dagger Fighting Claw. Critical hit chance increased to 10%. It's obviously not as good as Swarm because it's only the crit chance. You don't get the additional bonus as well. And you have to be using Fighting Claws and Daggers. And I will be honest, I'm a much bigger fan of the Weeping Blades. I really like the poison on them. However, I wanted to try this out to see what the extra crit got me and if it's of any use. And we've gone with Demoralize, and I would actually advise against that. You can go with it on your leader because he has a big old leadership here. But I think there's actually some better passives you can put in. Looking into the accuracy tree, I'll show you what I'm planning for this chap. We're going to be going with Deep Wounds, critical hit damage increased by 20%. That'll be fantastic seeing as we're building up on his crit chance. Worth noting, by the way, not a lot of strength. Putting 10 points in there would get him another 7 times 3, a fair bit of damage actually. But we're going to have to hold fire on that because what we want in the meantime, toughness based, let's have a little look. Toughness active. We're going to be going for Black Hunger. Maxed out damage bonus increase 40%, dodge parry bypass 40%. So he's going to be reliably hitting enemies for a lot of damage. And look how cheap that is to use, 2 strategy points. Really powerful, really powerful move. We're going to basically be combining that with Vital Strike, which will up our critical hit even more. So by the time we're done, I'm expecting we'll have about 60% critical hit chance with Vital Strike. I'm hoping these guys will be able to reliably stun the opponents. I'm not quite sure at this point in time what I want to replace Demoralize with if I were to build this guy again, but I would probably hold up for something else on the leadership tree, and I'm going to hold another active most likely for something else in the leadership tree. Not entirely sure what yet. It could be Retreat, in all honesty. That is a very good use of your blue pills. However, there's probably something else in here like Insult, which would secure more damage onto an opponent. If not, I'll be definitely getting Insult on one of my tanks that also has Intimidate. or sorry, demoralise. But that essentially covers our warband so far. With the two main heroes here, the Black Skaven and the leader, being dodge based, you can see we've got a lot of points in agility. They should really be using clothing and not light armour. This is simply something I've slipped up on, but at the moment I have some blue light armour with 20% absorb. I feel that's slightly better, so when they do get hit they can negate a fair bit of damage, but they should be using clothing, which will give them a bonus to their dodge chance, essentially making them much tougher to hit. They have a fairly good parry too, but dodge for them will be much better. And on that note, one final thing that we will be working towards once we get 15 agility is of course having sidestep, giving them 3 dodge attempts, making them much more survivable in combat. It would be quite nice, and I think on my Black Skaven I probably will include the passive for combat movement, making the cost of disengage a little bit cheaper. However, we're gonna come back to that. I think there's another passive here somewhere which will also make that slightly cheaper, but we're going to have a little rethink on that. But for the moment we're going with crit based, we're going with high damage, and hopefully they'll just be able to take out an enemy and rely on the tanks absorbing the rest of the incoming enemies to stay alive long enough. If not, they will have the ability to dodge, and hence they will be fairly reliable at fighting against impressives. However, if their dodge chance gets used up or taken away, they will get melted very quickly. So they're going to be your typical glass cannon basically. So hopefully that's been of some use. What I'll probably do is a little video here every now and again talking a little bit about tips and tricks for each of the warbands, starting off with the Skaven stuff though. And we'll probably do a little video as well next time on the veteran system, which points are going to be of some use for you, which ones I'd recommend using, and go into a little bit of detail as to why. So once again, thanks for stopping by. Feel free to like the video, feel free to dislike the video, leave a comment, tell me what you enjoyed, tell me what you'd like to see in the next episode, and once again, Happy New Year.